I think the default state was anxiety. I mean, it was just, this is unprecedented. It's one thing to cancel a tour or miss dates or go home, but the whole idea of you will make $0 this entire year, you may not make any money next year, your career's done. Opiate overdoses are up 30%, relapses are up about 30%. Yeah, across the board. I mean, normally connection is what helps us put depression, anxiety, addiction in remission. And the whole idea of, most alcoholics naturally are good at isolating. And here you are, right back into which triggers all of your character defects. So yeah, my phone has been ringing off the hook.
Hey, what's up, Vox and Hops heads? I'm Matt, the vocalist of Cryptopsy and the host of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast, brought to you by Sound Talent Media, where I sit down with fellow metal musicians to talk about their lives, music, and craft beer. This is it. This is the final episode of Vox and Hops' Sober February. We have done a whole month where all of the episodes are focused on having a balanced relationship with alcohol. I have spoken to musicians who are now sober. I have spoken to craft beer breweries who have focused on making non-alcoholic brews. I've spoken to an amazing human who has a PhD and a master's in nutritional science who told us exactly why alcohol is bad for us. Now, after this whole month, I hope that you have taken the time to re-examine your relationship with alcohol. I know that this month really helped me look at my relationship with alcohol, and I know that moving on from now, I know that I'm going to have a different approach to it now. I love craft beer. You guys know this, but too much of any good thing is a bad thing. So let us all enjoy life, metal, and craft beer together for many, many, many more years to come by having a better relationship with alcohol. Before we jump into today's episode, I'd just like to encourage you to subscribe to the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast on the podcast platform of your choice. But more than that, you should also rate it and write a review, because when you do that, more people just like yourself will be able to discover the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast. Also, you can now sign up to the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast newsletter by going to my website, voxandhops.com. That is VOXANDHOPS.com. And when you do that, you shall receive one email a week containing all of the details of everything that has happened throughout the past week in the world of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast, including all the details for any episodes which I have dropped throughout that week. If I have been a guest on someone else's podcast, there will be the links to any upcoming live interview Thirsty Thursday virtual hangs, as well as the links to the Brutal Awakenings playlist, which is curated by my man Jerry Monk, the metal architect himself. Do yourself a favor, join the party, sign up to the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast newsletter. Now, on today's episode, I'm with a very, very cool human, a perfect guest to wrap up Vox and Hops' Sober February with. Get ready, everyone. This is Vox and Hops episode number 236 with Dave Sherman of The Road to Rehab.
I warn you, what you are about to hear is very disturbing indeed.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Today, I'm with Dave Sherman of The Road to Rehab. I am very, very stoked to be with you because this is Vox and Hops' Sober February, and you are an integral part to many people's sobriety. Let's start with a brief introduction of yourself. Who are you? What is The Road to Rehab? We're going to dig deep into it today, so just a very short intro as to what that is.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. I'm thrilled that we got connected. Really thrilled to have this opportunity to hopefully help some people. Dave Sherman, theroadtorehab.com. I got sober in 99 from about 15, 16 years of alcohol and substance abuse. And when I was about 3.5 years sober, it's about 2002. After back in the music industry for a minute, I ended up as a clinician, a counselor, at 4 different treatment facilities, rehabs over about 10 years. And kind of at night and on the weekends, I was starting to get referrals from having that background in the music industry from, and this may shock you, musicians have been known to, on occasion, abuse drugs and alcohol. I know, good thing you were sitting down. And so I kind of slowly segued into becoming almost like an interventionist and a sober coach, but on tour, sober companion. And in about 2012, I walked away from the field rehabs, and I kind of did a private practice where now they're calling it telehealth, but back then I just called it Skype and FaceTime. But I started seeing all my clients this way, and then it just kind of segued into 3 or 4 times a year for anywhere between 3 days and 6, 8, 10 weeks. I'll be out on tour on the road with a band.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And you were so very avant-garde because now everyone does everything this way.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I know. I'm just a man ahead of my time. Yeah, yeah, totally.
Let's talk about you. Let's talk about your early relationship. You mentioned you've been sober since '99. Vox and Hops always like to go back to that very first beer. Do you remember the first beer you ever had, Dave?
Oh, sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you'll hear this all the time amongst people in recovery, in that I don't. I was probably 13-ish, and I was going out of my skin. I was just a very uncomfortable, awkward child. I was very anxious all the time. I was depressed. I had a lot of unhealthy dialogue going on in my head, and I don't remember my first Coke or my first cup of coffee, but my first big shot of vodka. I remember, it was me and a kid my age, and we bought a cheap bottle of vodka. We should have spent the extra couple of bucks and gotten the glass bottle, like really gone classy. But I remember in very rapid succession, like as I brought it to my lips, I remember thinking, this smells disgusting, and then this tastes disgusting, and then what I called the van load of 8-year-olds inside my head suddenly became a gospel choir. And it was just, for me, it was like a light switch. There's some people that progress into alcoholism, but I was just full blown. That night is almost a complete blackout, just shot after shot. Like, if one shot makes me feel this good, then 2 shots will make me feel twice as good. That's like the alcoholic math.
One is too much, and two is too many. It's never enough, right?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just, and he and I, it turns out he had a drinking problem too. We just, finished
Wow.
off the bottle between the two of us, a couple of 13-year-olds. Like, this is the best thing ever.
Crazy, crazy.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your musician side or in the music industry. Tell me about how you worked with the music industry
Yeah.
before you got into all this.
Well, in college, I was singing in a band in probably 1991, which was just, I wasn't very good, but it was a really good way to get girls. Turns out I wasn't the first person to think that. And then I a lot of jobs, in my 20s, like I did some promotions, did some open mic nights. And then after I got sober, I ended up managing some bands and some solo artists. I ended up back at a label. I was doing the video commissioner at a pretty big record label, and then I was managing the recording studios. Yeah, and then just managing some baby bands out of Philly, got them signed to some indie deals, but nothing ever came of it. And the counseling thing happened, and it was one of those where I love helping people get better, and I love being surrounded by creative types, and just the whole idea of having a career that kind of combines both of those. Like, if I had planned that one right.
Sometimes, you just
Yeah,
life gives you the
totally,
path that you need to walk.
totally. Yeah.
And you had to walk down both those roads to be on this road now, which is amazing.
Well, like when people say they hate their job, I'm like, oh well, sorry. It sucks to be you, dude. Yeah, totally. I'm gonna get on tour with the band. I'll see you in 6 weeks. Yeah, totally.
It's insane that you became that guy that bands would just hit up
Yeah,
because they must have had that relationship with you. You were probably very open about being sober and your struggles
yeah.
and being that guy that you could be turned to open up to and to have a listening ear.
Well, definitely a lot of the musicians I knew early on knew my background, but then Mike Shea from Alternative Press actually said, "Why don't you do some columns for the magazine?" And the first one was just, he gave me the topic. He said, "Why do artists abuse drugs and alcohol?" So I did 1,100, 1,200 words, and they put it up on a Saturday, and I kind of outed myself in the first paragraph. Just, this is who I am, my deal, and this is what I do. And like Tuesday, they hit me back and said, "Can you do more of these?" Because they had gotten something like 10,000 page views in like 3 days. Like,
Wow.
it touched a nerve. It was perfect timing, I guess.
It's
And
crazy
that's
though.
just kind of, well, now everybody knows I'm sober. Okay, let's go with that. Yeah,
But the, artists, it's me
yeah,
having lived it. You're out there, you step into that venue, you perform. The people that are coming to the show, it's a special night for them. They want
sure,
to party with you. They
sure.
want you to be that guy
Yeah,
that's going to give them rock their socks off and
yeah.
then party until they drop. And that's what's expected of a musician. Why is that?
Well, I think that why we love music is that visceral experience. It's for me, it was always transcendence. I forget the bills, and I forget the family issues and the depression, anxiety, and there's just, I was that 15-year-old kid in the front row, And that artist was 10 feet tall and bulletproof. And, their lyrics were changing my life and kept me from killing myself. So the idea of, can we make this more intense? Just doing a shot with that person was just, or smoking a joint behind the venue with them. I mean, that's just, you tell your friends about those stories. I mean, I remember, being at shows, and I'm a certain age, where like Jane's Addiction in like 1990, at a small venue, or seeing Jeff Buckley at a small venue. These are stories that I'm still telling. I saw the Smashing Pumpkins in a bar, with Hole
Insane.
opening up, and it's, I'm still telling those stories 30 years later. They just blew a hole through the building. It was like, so I get it. Like, I totally get it from both sides. Like, when these kids come up to me talking about, this guy, or there's a picture of me with him, versus, like, and these are the guys that are calling me at midnight on Saturday. I'm going, dude, could you just call me tomorrow? Like, I'm trying to go to bed. Like, like, I know you're on the cover of the magazine, but so it's very through the looking glass.
Let's talk about, once you did start to do your own private practice, the road to rehab. What steps did you have to take to get out there? How easy was it for you to get clients? I imagine it's a lot of word of mouth that was working out there.
Yeah, totally. One of the things I've never done is market. Once a year I'll post my website on one of the social medias, and that's the entirety of my marketing. The alternative press really helped a lot. It got the word out there. And I've actually been on a whole bunch of podcasts. Jeff Reckley from the Band Thursday had me on his, which got a decent amount of traction. And visual artists, I ended up in a bunch of circles of people. I collect art, and some of these darker artists. There's a guy named Chet Zar. I don't know if you're familiar. He did. He worked with Tool early on a lot.
Very
and
cool.
He did a lot of movies. He and Adam Jones were,
Very
and
cool.
he directed a lot of the early videos. He worked with Adam, and he's had me on his podcast a couple times. So just, yeah, word of mouth. It just kind of gets out there. Turns out there aren't that many guys that have the background that I do, so people tend to remember the name.
Yeah, and you provide something very unique, which is
Yeah.
I'd like to shine some light on that, to take me down exactly what the road to rehab provides for a musician.
Well, I do. I'm sober, and I'm sober a decent amount of time. In February 5th, I'll have 22 years, which is a chunk of time. Um,
Congrats.
Thank you. So far, so good. I've studied, the disease model concept of addiction, which I believe in alcoholism. I spent a lot of years working in facilities, so I have a kind of a cognitive behavioral therapy background. And I worked inpatient, outpatient, residential. I've done interventions. So there aren't that many aspects of the field that I haven't had first person experience with. And I think that probably comes across in when I meet people. There's something about connecting with another person that has alcoholism or addiction. It's very easy to develop rapport pretty quickly.
Absolutely. And then how often is it the person that's coming and contacting themselves versus management versus family members
That's a good
versus
question.
band members?
All across the board, I'd say evenly split. And like the guy that introduced us, he's an agent, and he and I have joked many times. He's got two kinds of artists. He's got artists that have been my client and artists that will be my client. I mean, it's just, and it's not necessarily just alcoholism or addiction, because once you stop using, and the 11 years I spent in the field, it's the underlying stuff, the causes and conditions, the anxiety, the depression, the relationship issues, the trauma, and over those, working with 10, 12, 15 clients a day for 11, 12 years, and 8 in private practice, there's very little I haven't seen at this point, and I've helped people a little bit of everything, or a lot of everything. So even I've got plenty of musicians that aren't necessarily an addict or an alcoholic, but we can still help them with, whatever they're dealing with right now. That
Absolutely.
fear of success, the fear of failure, the being away from the relationship at home for 10 months a year, the trying to make the family work, all that stuff.
Why does my bandmate keep doing this thing?
Right. Totally. And if I punch him, is that an appropriate coping skill? Yeah.
Depends if he likes it, right?
Well, right. Yeah, right. Depends which state you're in, I think. Yeah.
Vox and Hops is all about hanging out with my metal friends, talking about their lives, music, and craft beer. What are you drinking there on your side, Dave, today?
I have got, it's a Sprout Farm is some kind of organic. This is actually a good pandemic story. I don't know. It's a
Excellent.
lime seltzer. I'm not a lime seltzer guy, but right when everything went down, which would have been, I guess, probably April, when everybody started panicking about you probably shouldn't leave the house. And I walked out my front door, and there were 8 bags of groceries on my front porch. And I was like, okay, either somebody loves me or Instacart has fucked up. It's like, it's probably not A, it's more than likely. So I call Sprout Farms is this, it's like a Whole Foods upscale kind of market. And they say it's Instacart, give them a call. And I got one of those where the whole time is 1 hour and 45 minutes. And I was like, I am a good person. I'm going to wait, and I'm going to make sure the person whose groceries these are, because, it's a pandemic. So I wait an hour and 45 minutes, and the woman gets on the phone, and she says, "Here's the thing, Dave. We're doing 10 times a day what we used to do in a week. Everybody's getting, there's no way we have any idea whose groceries those are. So enjoy your groceries."
Wow.
So it's like 2 pounds of salmon and like pork chops and like cases of like, sparkling limes. It's all like, all right, you do what you got to do. So I see
Yeah.
that the universe is just, bestowing bounty upon me.
That's one positive thing of COVID right
Exactly.
there.
Totally. Yeah, how are you guys doing up there?
Oh, it's crazy up here in Canada in Montreal right now. We're in a lockdown. We have a curfew.
Yeah.
It's fun, but
All right.
we're doing okay. I'm hanging out with my family, so I'm okay.
Well,
I'm
you have competent, leadership at least.
yes, yes, yes.
Hop tea chamomile. That
That's
sounds
right.
delicious.
Yes, this is from Hoplark. This is their hop tea. This is
Okay.
a sparkling water, which has
Nice.
been brewed with some tea, chamomile in this one, and some hops,
Ooh.
which is citrus. So it's completely non-alcoholic. It has no sugar, no calories. I love it. And it's got the chamomile, so there's no caffeine tea in it. And it's a great
Nice.
nighttime substitution for a beer. It feels like a beer, but it's not a beer, and I like that. Uh,
Nice.
let's talk about 2020.
Yep.
Do you feel like your clients had, they're not, obviously not on tours, so life
Right.
is
Right.
completely different for them. Would that be an option for them to have more triggers to fall back into their negative tendencies?
That's a great question. I think the default state was anxiety. I mean, it was just,
Mm,
this is unprecedented. It's one thing to cancel a tour or miss dates or go home but the whole idea of you will make $0 this entire year. You may not make any money next year. Your career's done. And I had a whole bunch of touring lined up in the spring with a band. So like I get it. And opiate overdoses are up 30%. Relapses are up
wow.
about 30%. Yeah, across the board. I mean, normally connection is what helps us put depression, anxiety, addiction in remission. And the whole idea of, most alcoholics naturally are good at isolating. And here you are, right back into which triggers all of your character defects. So yeah, my phone has been ringing off the hook, needless to say. Yeah, I actually started doing, when CAA, so this would have been about August, made the announcement they were going to lay off another third of their staff, and everybody had an additional round of panicking, was when I got on BobNet. I don't know, it's like a music industry forum in the US, touring professionals. And I said, we're doing a pro bono group once a week for, just general mental health, anxiety, depression on Zoom. We did that once a week. I just stopped about a week, 2 weeks ago. It went there for about 5 months. We'd get
That's
6, 8,
amazing.
10, 12 people a week. Yeah, just because people needed it. And it was really helpful. It's a rough year, man. I keep telling people this isn't about, career advancement or getting married or having a kid. Just survive. Just don't worry about just fucking survive this year.
Yeah, and hopefully channel those negative demons into creativity,
Yeah.
which is hard, but you got to push yourself sometimes.
Well, we both know a lot of artists that can turn negative stuff into something beautiful. Um, and it's just universal. I mean, everybody's going through this. It's the whole world is in the same boat right now. So there's no reason not to tap into some of that and write some songs.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The more people I've been talking to, I'm hoping that's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
Um,
Totally.
let's see. But with when you go out on tour, what exactly happens there? You hang out with a specific artist. What is the band must automatically know that this is happening, that
Well,
there's a
not always.
bunk there's a bunk
Not
being
always.
sacrificed. There goes the junk bunk because now
Yeah.
it's Dave's bunk,
Right.
and
Right.
I know that is a big argument sometimes on a tour bus. So
Well, usually by the time I get the call, the behavior has been negative for a period of time. So usually it's like, oh, Dave's here. We'll give up the junk bunk. We're thrilled. Well, like, yeah. Usually it's a lot of relief, and usually depending on the size of the band, um, most people will know who I am or have some kind of idea of the role I fill. And usually by day 3 or 4 or 5, other people are going, so if I got a girlfriend at home, and I'm like, yeah, 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 what's the scoop? And everybody's got other things they need to talk about, but it never occurred to them to do that. There have been tours where, like on the bigger ones, with the 5 buses and the 6 semis, that like on day one, everybody will do an introduction. They'll be like, and here's Dave, the wellness coach. And I'll go, I don't even know what that means because nobody told me I was the wellness. And I'm with, the front man and I'm just part of the entourage. And it's like,
yeah.
it's not my story to tell. So
Mhm.
when he's comfortable. Usually by about week 3, people go, so you drink a lot of coffee and you guys disappear every day for an hour, and they can start putting it together. And
Mhm.
he's not acting insane, so I bet, it's one of those deals.
So everyone loves you.
And eventually, eventually,
Except for the person's ex-party people,
right,
because
right, totally, yeah. Or
the
if they relapse,
yes,
because I've
yeah,
had one of the things that happens if somebody's gearing up to go back out, all the old behavior starts presenting itself: the ego, the craziness, the anger, and they're the only one that doesn't see it. But if there's one person you do not want close to you when you're about to start using it, it will be me. So usually they need to kind of ratchet up, the accusations of, like weirdness, and I've had a couple, and then you suddenly say to yourself, okay, he's pissed off at me. I'm not sure why, but he's got 1.2 million Twitter followers. Is he about to post? It's one of those where you just get paranoid for a couple days.
but do you stick
Things
around
happen.
in situations like that, even if they don't want you there anymore?
Well, I've never actually, it's never gotten to that point. I've gotten like towards the tail end of a tour, the guy would get a little grumpy, but hadn't started using yet. And it was like, I think I know what's going to happen. And usually a week or two after the tour, I stop hearing from them. And that means they're usually back out again. I've
Mm.
never had a problem on a tour.
And how often is there relapses and then you come back again, and there's a lot of shame involved with that, of course,
Can be, sure. Guilt,
and
shame,
then
remorse, the whole bit. Yeah.
you're just there for them like a rock.
Try to be, sure. Yeah. Yeah. That's the long and the short of it. Yeah.
Is that hard for you to put work in and then see it go away? But I guess every person's different, right?
Well, I think it's more than likely for any guitar player. It's like a callus. It's like I've been doing this for a while.
Mm-hmm.
The
Mm-hmm.
first 5, 6, 8, 10 years when I was working in rehabs, I would definitely lose sleep on the weekends, worried about my clients. Um, and there, some you really that I've known for years. I've been working with for years and years and years, and we've developed really good rapport. So yeah, if they were to go back at it, definitely be gutted. But it's not like it used to be. Like it happens. I've seen enough people relapse over 21 years that par for the course.
I think that now in the modern age, more people are talking about it, are exposed
Mm.
to the addiction and knowing that it is a disease,
Yeah,
versus the 70s, 80s when
yeah,
being that guy was cool. Oh, he's
yeah.
just passed out again, or he's just
Well, that's the industry is. When you look at what now is cancel culture, that was literally encouraged for decades and decades and decades, and all of a sudden we're at a place in 2019 and 20 where the reason people got in bands, for the debauchery and the pirate ship, it's like, yeah, no, that gets you thrown off tours.
yeah,
So it's a really interesting time.
yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah,
interesting to see where
yeah.
all of this is going to take us to be a more professional,
Well, I
you
mean,
know,
like if the Allman Brothers had Instagram, like how ugly would that have been,
or Motley Crue,
or Motley Crue, yeah. Yeah, everybody posts how much fun they're having on Friday night. Nobody posts, waking up in a puddle of their own vomit and you're on Saturday morning. You don't see that Instagram.
You know?
Yeah.
When you do come in on a tour bus, the band is so happy that you're there. Do they have to change their party habits?
Depends on the band. Like I've been out, there was a guy who, excuse me, he was the singer, and he basically said they were all hired guns. He said it's a dry tour,
Mm.
and they all went okay. They loved the gig, so yeah, they were going to do it. But that's not always the case. I've been on tours where other people are still doing their thing, and they may or may not have a problem. And I've been on tours where like the singer is sober, and I'm with him, and the bass player is face down in the gutter, going, "Ah, sucks to be you guys," and we're going, "Okay, just make sure my number's in your phone, dude, because you're gonna." It happens. There's definitely people at varying levels of progression of where they are in terms of, either getting drunk or getting sober.
Mm. Have you seen people or know people in the industry that you wished did call you? You can't tell me their names, obviously, but
Oh, sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's definitely the back of my head, because you go out on a tour, whether it's the Warped Tour where there's 60 bands, and it's just like he's going to be calling me about 8 months. That guy, year and a half. It's like that. How cooked are they? Like a steak. That guy's well done. He's going to need to call me in about 3 weeks at the most. Yeah, definitely.
what are some of the worst addictions to kick?
Well, ultimately, it's all the same. Um, I think that, as scary as crack and heroin are, alcohol kills more people every year, and some of that is it's legal, it's socially acceptable, and cigarettes are killing hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people a year, and you can just go to, any, you can't go to the corner store and get heroin, which is probably a good thing.
Yes.
Um, it just really depends on how bad you want to kick it. Chemically speaking, none of them are any harder than any others. the availability and the cheapness. I mean, with weed, you could smoke a lot of weed all day long and never worry about, spending the rent money.
Hmm.
But it does
Well,
stunt your emotional maturity
why is alcohol such a killer, but yet still so accepted?
because it makes you feel good.
Hmm.
I mean, if alcohol affected me the same way juice does, I mean, and it's funny because you can go to a barbecue and you can have 6 or 8 or 10 beers and nobody bats an eye. But if I had 9 orange juices at a barbecue, you'd be like, what is wrong with that dude?
That's
Like that
true.
would be really strange, right? Guy's got a gallon of orange juice. That's fucking weird, man. Yeah, so it's socially acceptable. It's legal. How much of that is the lobby organization? All of it. Those are very powerful organizations, and tobacco is the same way.
Yeah, I'm hoping that the whole advertising of it gets ramped down
Yeah.
until there's just about nothing out there, for
Well, because you don't ever see the commercials where it's like the guys on the beach with the girls in the bikinis, and you're like, "What's his secret? Meth." Like you don't. There isn't like the big lobbying organization buying heroin. But it'd be doing the same thing. Coors Light. That's how you get the girl in the bikini.
and the opioid plague that's happening
Yeah,
across America and the world
yeah,
right now
yeah.
is very, very frightening. Can you shed a
Yeah.
word on that, please?
Well, it's chemically speaking, it's getting easier and easier and cheaper to produce deadlier and deadlier products. And the thing about opiates is it's usually the progression. You've worked your way through drinking and maybe some cocaine and ecstasy, and you get to the point where alcoholism and addiction are a progressive disease. It gets worse over time, and you need more and more to get that same level of numbness. So inevitably, a lot of people and the availability of from OxyContin, which, as we all know, this family was pushing this non-addictive opiate, which is ridiculous. And then to fentanyl, and then we've got carfentanil. I mean, these are incredibly deadly substances that are really easy to get. I mean, it used to be you had to go to really bad neighborhoods to cop opiates, and these days you
Hmm.
can just go to the pharmacy.
That's scary.
Totally. Yeah.
Very scary.
Yeah. Yeah.
You guys also do follow up and step downs after tour. Talk me through that.
Sure.
What does that do?
Well, like most of my clients, 90% of it is me talking to people over the web. So we just pick that right back up. But shifting gears is hard for anybody, let alone if you're an addict or an alcoholic. And being on the road for 6 or 8 or 10 weeks or 12 weeks, you get into that rhythm. And it's the thing about touring is it parallels addiction and alcoholism. You could be a perfectly normal person and you go on tour for 8 or 10 or 12 weeks and then a break and then back out for 9 or 10 months a year. You're not developing the coping skills that a normal person would. You don't have those emotional anchors to the bank teller and the guy at the grocery store and your neighbors and you're just in and out and in and out and there's no emotional roots. So anybody that's out on the road 9, 10 months a year is a little stunted emotionally and could really use some help with those shifting of gears. So depending on the artist, I'll go stay in their hometown in a hotel for 3 or 4 days or a week, and we'll exercise every day. We'll take a yoga class. We'll maybe hit some support groups, just to get them back into that rhythm of being at home and coming back down. Because it's, like getting shot out of a cannon.
It's crazy because
It
we never
is. You're used
stop.
to people bring the food and people bring the coffee and you know where you're supposed to be. And then all of a sudden you're home. You're like, I got to make my own coffee. Where's security? What is this?
Every day is dictated when you're on tour,
Totally.
Every minute is planned, so you
Yeah.
know where you have to be or where you
Yeah.
don't want to be, but you still go.
Right.
Whereas at home,
And
what's
I
going to
used
happen?
to, when I would get off tour the first, year or so, I would kind of crash and get a little depressed and hit the wall and just, it would get sick for about a week or 10 days because I just really wasn't taking care of myself enough to, you know, figure out a way to transition. And, it took me a couple, 3 tours to realize that all the stuff I'm telling all my clients, I need to do the same thing. And, if I took half my own advice, I'd be healthy, right? As with most people. So you sleep a little late, you take a couple of showers or 3 showers. And then for me, I have a pretty decent sized backyard. I'd immediately mow the lawn, because you get so full of yourself out on the road and the
Sure.
crowd and the adrenaline and who's bringing me coffee. And then like I get my hands in the garden, I've got or I build something. I have a table saw and, I make furniture. It's like I need to just pull myself back down, a little bit of humility, a little bit back down to earth and get grounded. And before you know it, I feel perfectly fine again. And I don't have that crash coming off the tour.
See, that's very, very wise. It's hard. It's hard. Luckily, I come home and I got my kids jumping on me, and
Perfect.
that immediately, I'm obviously not the center of attention anymore.
Right, right. You know, it's like, oh yeah, my kid wants a smoothie. I'm gonna make him a smoothie. That's important. You know, like that priorities, dude. Totally. Nothing more important than your kid needing a smoothie.
With the whole pandemic, and it's not finished yet, and it's still continuing. That must be scary for anyone that's trying to organize tours, the anxiety behind all that.
Totally.
What would be some advice for some people that are struggling? What would you say to them?
Yeah. I think that whenever I project into the future, I get anxious, and whenever I focus on the past, I get angry about decisions I should have made.
Yeah.
So, and I give so much credit for agents right now that are trying to book shows. Like I remember this year when like South by Southwest got canceled, and I remember thinking, oh man, that's just gonna everything's gonna fall like dominoes after that because that's the big one. And just the whole idea of everybody was going, all right, late summer will be okay, and then it was like
Mm.
late fall will be okay, and then I can't imagine just having to schedule and then scratch and then reschedule and scratch. And so what I'm telling everybody is just try to stay in today. You know, stay as close as possible. Now, agents can't do that, God knows, but they're making their money's worth this year, man. That is really hard. I mean, everybody feels like they're an octopus trying to juggle. Is the analogy I'm making? You know, so just come up with a rhythm. And for me, it's simple. You know, like I eat relatively well these days. I make sure I get 8 hours of sleep. I exercise every day for about 25, 30 minutes. I meditate for 8 or 10. Figure out what your rhythm is. Get outside, walk around the block. Um, you know, and now that it's cold, like I set myself up for, you know, I bought a table saw and give myself some hobbies to do inside because it's depressing when it's cold out. You know, it was bad enough, but now we can't even go for walks and, you know, you can't go for a drive. So like figure out what works for you. Find 6 or 8 things a day that you can check in with yourself and just stick to it. Find your rhythm and stay in today as much as possible.
That's very, very good advice for all musicians or anyone that can't do what they're supposed to be doing
Yeah,
because of this pandemic. It's
yeah,
really, really smart. Just idle hands, right?
totally, totally. I mean, take a minute off too. You know, I definitely, but by, you know, and especially with, you know, and I don't want to get political at all, but with the climate in America, we are really, everybody's just angry and anxious and scared. Um, and understandably so. You know, it's not like anybody's out of line doing that. I mean, people aren't blowing this out of proportion. But by Friday night, I'm ready for a day off. You know, I used to schedule clients on weekends, and this year I've been like, you know what? I really need to start making time for myself. It's important because everybody's just so strung out. Yeah. And I feel like
Absolutely.
we're all running marathons when we're just sitting on the couch.
That's good. That's good that you do that. I was expecting you to be always on the call, always on call because of the nature of your business.
Well, I am,
That's where I was going. It
but
was,
I've gotten
are there
better at,
artists that you
yeah.
have to take their call?
Well, yeah. I mean, and this year especially, if somebody calls me Saturday, I will absolutely pick up. But I'll say to them, look, I'm going to give you 10 minutes, but I'm not going to give you an hour. You know, whereas I used to just stay up till 2 in the morning, and now I'm like, and then we'll just, you know, we'll pick it up. If it's a crisis, we're absolutely on. Most of them aren't actually crises. Most of them just need to hear a voice on the phone going, we're okay. Like, I mean, I'm sure you saw in the news a week ago Wednesday when, you know, a couple thousand people attacked, you know, Congress. I was getting calls from people that I haven't heard from in literally years. You know, like profound musicians that are pretty big that should be calling me but aren't because they're using. And you know, 10 o'clock at night on Wednesday, I'm like, are we gonna be okay? I hope. Like I don't. You know, I'm watching the news like you are,
No,
dude.
shit.
I don't know.
Scary times, but we're gonna be
It's
okay. We're
this
gonna
is
be
a year
okay.
for the books. You know, this time tomorrow, I will sleep a lot better tomorrow night. Is all I'm saying.
We're recording this on the Tuesday before
Oh, right, right,
Biden's
right, right.
inauguration. So
Not that I'm counting down the hours at all, 18 to go, but yeah.
you can't do this all alone. Do you have a team, or is it really just all you?
I'm in private practice by myself, but I have a therapist that I've known for years and years and years. We used to work together, and a mental health professional. And the three of us, every 6 months or so, we go get coffee, or we do it over Zoom these days, and we just vent about who's got the crazier clients. You know, any therapist, you know, or counselor or coach or whatever needs to have people they can vent to. So
I
yeah, I mean, I've got support
completely
too.
agree. Yeah,
Yeah,
especially because, the confidentiality
sure.
of your clients is so important.
Yep,
So
totally.
you can't share any of these real problems with anyone.
No, yeah, you know, and everything's encrypted, and yeah, it's interesting because it's like, you know, when you're a kid, you're like, I want to hang out with rock stars someday. Now that I do all the time, like, yeah, I can't even tell anybody. Like, man, got the fuzzy end of that lollipop.
That's too.
Can't even bring people to shows. Like, everybody wants to go to a concert. Sorry, dude, can't do it.
I don't know.
Can't confirm or deny. Yeah, totally.
What would be the best part of COVID? I like to always end with a little positive thing. What is the best thing that came out of this pandemic for you,
That's a good question.
aside from the free sparkling water?
Right, free sparkling water, a couple pounds of Atlantic salmon was nice. Well, the reality that under any and all circumstances, and this has been as stressful and anxiety provoking year as possible, I have seen dozens of people get sober.
Excellent.
Because what I'm talking about this year, the line I'm using for everybody is it's breakdown or breakthrough year. I mean, everybody is all the distractions we normally have that keep us from actually looking at our issues. All of that's been taken away, and you are sitting at home with your brain, and possibly not your drug of choice. So one of two things is going to happen: you're going to lose your mind, or you're going to pick up the phone and call me. And a lot of people have picked up the phone and called me and said, I need to do something. And it's like, that's fantastic. So yeah, in the big picture of this year, a lot of people have started making changes.
That's amazing.
It is. Yeah.
That's amazing. And that is a good thing. I like that.
Yeah.
It's true. Because
And sometimes you need it for it to be that bad before you realize I got to do something. Because the whole idea, and I was talking to one of my musicians about this, he's clean 3 years and I'm clean a while. The idea of copping dope in a global pandemic, like, oh my effing God, dude. Waiting on a street corner for a guy, like, with a mask on. Nightmare.
What would be some advice for people that, are on the fence?
Yeah.
They think that they have a problem, but they're not ready to take that leap yet.
No, that's a great question. And the thing is, I'll delineate it this way. If you think you might have a problem, people that don't have a drinking problem or don't have a drug problem, they don't spend any time thinking about it. Like my mother, who her entire life on a Friday night says, I could really use a scotch, has not spent any time at all wondering whether or not she's an alcoholic. So if you're even sitting on the fence, err on the side of caution. Pick up the phone, call somebody you trust, call me, find my website. There are support groups everywhere in every city. At the very beginning of the phone book, there's a program that has A's in it that you can find that is free, and it's everywhere, and they're more than happy to help. It's worth checking out a couple of meetings. Everything's on Zoom these days, so you don't even have to leave your house.
Another positive thing.
Yeah. Like if somebody's thinking about going to a meeting, the name of your town, Alcoholics Anonymous, and Zoom meetings, and it'll instantly pop up a list.
Amazing. Dave, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Taking the time, having a chat with me, talking about life, music, and you're amazing. The road to rehab. I really, really think it's amazing what you're doing, and very special and very important. And if anybody does need help, please go get it.
Yeah, by all means. Thanks so much for having me.
Hey, thank you all so much for listening right to the end. You know that I love and appreciate that. What a cool dude. What a genuine, amazing human. I love what Dave has built. I think it's truly unique. It is absolutely something that is needed because, being a touring musician is difficult. You live in this strange reality where life is not normal and every day can be a difficult day if you're suffering. So I'm so stoked that Dave created the Road to Rehab to help out any professional musicians out there. If you need help, Dave is there to help you. There's also a whole bunch of other people out there. That is one of the main things which I discovered by doing this Vox and Hops Sober February is that if you need the help, when you're ready for help, the help is there and is waiting for you. So do not be afraid to seek out the help. The Road to Rehab is one option. It's a very cool option. If you need someone to come out on tour with you, for example, it's the perfect option. But if you're not there yet, there is help in every city. Just Google it and you will find it. The help is there and they will be waiting to help you. Do not be afraid to ask for help. There is no shame in needing help. It is the first step of your new life. If you enjoyed this Vox and Hops episode, I would strongly encourage you to subscribe to it if you have not already on the podcast platform of your choice. But more than that, I'm asking you to rate it and write a review because when you do that, more metalheads just like yourself will be able to discover the Vox and Hops podcast. Also, you can sign up to the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast's newsletter. You can do that by going to my website, voxandhops.com. That is VOXAND VOX&HOPS.com. And when you do that, you shall receive one email a week containing all of the details of everything that has happened in the world of the Vox and Hops Metal podcast throughout the past week. Trust me, do it. Join the party. Sign up to the Vox and Hops Metal podcast's newsletter because I don't want you to miss a single thing. The Vox and Hops Metal podcast is brought to you by Sound Talent Media. I will be back next week with 2 episodes, but until then, remember to enjoy life, metal, and craft beer. Cheers, Vox and Hops heads.